Hello again folks, this is the next acquisition of skills screencast, and for this week we're going to be discussing reaction time. Alright, as an overview, reaction time is made up of various elements, and this concept of reaction time is essentially the speed at which we're able to process information and make a decision. So that's an overall definition of the concept of reaction time, not a specific definition of reaction time, as you'll see in a moment, so don't get confused with that definition. Our reaction time determines our success in sport. Those that can react quicker often are more successful. And as I was just mentioning, reaction time is broken down into three main elements. You have reaction time itself, movement time, and response time, and the examiner will ask you about each of those three elements or an individual element and ask you to define and give an example for each. So let's start with reaction time itself then. Reaction time is the time from a stimulus occurring to the performer starting to move in response to it. Now what we mean is a stimulus is something that catches your attention, something that needs a response to it. The best example for solid reaction time is a 100-meter sprinter or a sprinter that needs to start within a block situation. The stimulus itself would be the gun firing. That's a stimulus that the runner or the sprinter is watching for or waiting for. So the stimulus occurring is the gun going off, and therefore the reaction time is how quick that performer moves in response to the gun going off. Movement time is a little bit more different. Movement time is the time taken from starting the movement to completing it. So again, if we go back to a runner, for example, so the stimulus initially was the gun going off, the individual moving to the gun going off, that's reaction time. Forget the gun now. The time from you've taken from initially moving to the time you actually finish the race, that is your movement time. So for example, if we use Mo Farah in the picture, as soon as he moves off the starting blocks to the time taken he's finishing his race, that is movement time. So it's just the content of the race essentially. The last one is what we call response time, and response time is essentially reaction time and movement time put together. So response time is the time from the stimulus occurring to the completion of the movement. So if we go back to our 100-meter sprinter, it's the time from when the gun goes off, bang, to the sprinter crossing the finish line. That's response time. Good example here, if you're not using running, is something like downhill skiing, or you could even use BMX racing. So they start at the top, they go through the gate, they respond to the start sound, go through the gate. So the stimulus is the starter sound. They go through the gate, ski downhill very quickly, and cross the finish line. That's response time. So from the start stimulus to the finish of the movement, response time. Start stimulus to actually moving is reaction time. Forget the stimulus, it's just the action of moving to the end of the movement is movement time. Okay, you might need to go over those three again just to make sure you're pretty clear on each one, because I will be testing you this in the lesson. Now, key things to note are that there are a few factors that affect reaction time, and I'll go through these one by one, starting at the bottom left. So we start with sensory system. Essentially, your body will react quicker dependent on which senses are being utilised. For example, your sight will make you react quicker than, say, touch, because you've got to wait for something to make contact with your skin, whereas I can see something a little bit faster. In terms of age, scientifically speaking, as we go past the age of 20, your reaction time starts to decline. So the older you are, the less reaction time you have. The younger you are, the faster your reaction time is, generally speaking. In terms of gender, unfortunately, ladies, males have a faster reaction time than females. Limb used, well, that means if it's a limb that's closer to the brain, for example, my hands are closer to my brain and sensory system, that will react quicker than, say, my little toe, which is a bit further from my brain, and it's got to travel up the nervous system to get that information to my brain. So depending on the limb used depends how quick you can react to something. With regards to personality, what we call an extrovert, someone who's quite excitable, outgoing, sociable, those people generally have a quicker reaction time than someone who is an introvert. And an introvert is someone who's quite shy, quite reserved, doesn't like to come into social groups, etc. Body temperature. The warmer you are, the faster you will react. That's relating to your muscles, as you know in A&P. So if we can get those muscles warm and vibrant, our reaction times will increase. And the last one says alertness and arousal level. Well, if we psychologically motivate ourselves to become more aroused about our performance, we're going to react quicker. So you might have been in games where you think, oh yeah, I'm really up for this game today. And it's in those situations where you're going to react quicker than if you're in a lethargic approach whereby you think, well, I'm not really bothered about this game so much. You won't react as fast. Last things to cover are what we call simple and choice reaction time, and I'll go over this within class. Simple reaction time occurs when there is only one response to a given stimulus. For example, if I fire a gun in 100-meter running, there is generally only one response: you must run. Okay, gun goes off, is the stimulus, you must run is your decision to make. Okay, so one decision to make, one stimulus. Added to that, with simple reaction time, that is quite like serial processing, which we talked about last week, in which one skill is processed after the other. So your brain only processes one skill at a time to that given stimulus. The opposite to that is choice reaction time, and choice reaction time occurs when one of two things happens. Generally, it occurs when there is more than one stimulus. So it could be we're in a game of some description and there are 2 or 3 balls moving towards me. So I'm focusing on 2 or 3 things at the same time. So it could be both of these things or each. There is more than one response that's required. And what I mean by that is if you're in a game situation, let's say netball, and you catch the ball. Once you catch the ball, what do? Your brain hasn't got a definite response in terms of there's only one choice. There's multiple choices. You could hold on to it and shield that ball. You could pass the ball, or if you're in the D, you could shoot. So there are multiple responses. And that's what we call choice reaction time. And again, we spoke a little bit about that last week, and that's to do with parallel processing and how your brain has lots of things to process and does them more than once. Okay, as per usual, make very good notes, bring them to class, and we'll discuss this further.